Thank you. So yeah, Emily, thank you for your question. So your question is, first of all, the question is, what is expected of you in terms of site improvement? Should we input our actual data into our presentation or just the preliminary considerations? So what I'm looking for with regards to that question is, if you want to make your street of interest into a more multimodal street, what are some of the things that you would consider? What are some of the key elements of converting a street into a complete street? So I think what you might benefit from is doing some literature review. What are some of the complete street conversion projects have looked like in the past? And then you will consider those all of those improvements that you find in the literature, and then you list them out, and then you'll start considering, could all of these be implemented on my street? Could maybe some of them don't make sense because I don't have certain things? For example, like just to take an example, like if your street is not a bus route, so then maybe adding a bus lane doesn't make sense. And I'm not saying your street doesn't have a bus route. I'm just giving an example that what some of the improvements that may or may not make sense. So I'm looking for you to review the improvements that you find in the literature. What do reports and papers consider to be complete street improvements? And then taking those improvements and making sure that they are appropriate for your street, and then start looking for some data, some information about what are some of the benefit cost ratios that have been obtained. So what is the cost of converting or adding a bike lane, for example? So you might find that from the literature, and that's okay, unless it's like very old literature, you can potentially rely on that for the cost. For the benefits though, I'm looking a little bit more for you to dig into a little bit more data. So I would love for you to actually find some crash data if you could for that street, and then maybe use some sort of like what is the safety impact of a certain improvement, and then use that impact to come up with the benefits of that. And again, you don't have to have the final number tomorrow, but I would love to have what all things that you're considering. And if you present something in presentation, that does not absolutely bind you to have all of that in your report. Tomorrow is the day to give some ideas that you have, get my feedback and feedback from everybody in the class, and then refine the report over the next 2 weeks that you're going to submit. So does that answer some of your question about the literature review and for the site improvements, and what should you put in the presentation versus what goes in the report? And if there are some questions, let me know, please.
Yeah, I had like one more question for the Tiger criteria. We were researching the state of good repair and economic competitiveness, and we figured out that like state of good repair is kind of like different per like city, I guess, based on like the agency that's in charge. So what did you really want us to like state for that?
I would consult like the criteria that USDOT uses, because this, so what I want you to do is, you're probably finding multiple resources that discuss the concept of state of good repair, and agencies might have their different sort of flavors of it. But what I want you to do is consider anything from the USDOT, Federal Highway Administration, those types of places, and kind of rely on that. So I would love for you to research state of good repair as defined by USDOT and any of the federal government sources, and then go from there.
Okay. And for the data sources,
what's that?
For the data sources, is that just like slow cog, like traffic counts, and like TIMS, like what sites we've gone to?
Yeah, so TIMS would be a good source. TIMS, Transportation Injury Mapping System, would be a good source for crash data. City of Slow, if your corridor is maintained by city, they might have some traffic counts and stuff. And I think those traffic counts can potentially help you, ultimately assemble some information about travel time savings and whatnot. So yeah, those will be your data sources. Again, you don't have to have the final data tomorrow, but I would love for you to show me what data sources you're considering and what you're finding there. And if there is like one measure, or if there are a few measures that you're concerned about that you may not be able to find, or you're thinking, okay, it'll be really good to have this measure, but we don't know where to find it or something. So if there are some measures like that, absolutely feel free to talk about that in the lab presentation tomorrow. And then we can go from there. And then I can provide you with some feedback, and we can talk about what other groups are doing as well. and go from there.
Okay.
Does that answer your questions, Emily? All of them?
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. And feel free to stop by. I'll be here till 11. And if you're to hang out, I guess David would be okay if you want to hang out and look at or at least listen in to what David's questions are as well. I'm fine with that too.
Okay.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen.
Yes, please. And we are recording this, so I hope that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I also had a question about the data sources. So my partners came up with these ones, which are the ones that Emily mentioned as well. But I'm not too sure where to locate these. Are they on the internet?
Yeah, you should be able to find the city traffic counts. So if you search for City of San Luis Obispo traffic counts, you should be able to find traffic volumes. And I think Tim should have the SWTRS data, collision data.
Okay, and then once
And let's say, you come up with more data sources that you're not thinking about right now, and I'll let you think about those, but you don't know, you're not sure where to find it. It's absolutely okay to present that tomorrow. And so that we can, put our heads together and see where we might be able to find those things. So as I said to Emily, it's absolutely fine to talk about these data sources, but not being sure where to find and where to locate stuff is absolutely fine. We can, yeah, that wouldn't hurt your grade or anything like that.
Yeah. Are there any other data sources that would be beneficial to have besides these two?
Right. I think there might be some that talk about, like, if you want to, and I don't know, depending upon your project and how detailed you want to be, there might be some data sources on costs. Like, how do we estimate the costs of something?
Mm-hmm.
Cost of certain projects, maybe resurfacing projects and things like that. So you might look into that. But I'll let you, everything else I'll let you figure out.
Okay. Yeah, this is our
yeah, no, this is good. Yeah, and then this is great, right? Because you have the speed limit of 45 to 55 miles per hour, which is pretty high. But maybe there is, like, if you can make those improvements, you can bring down the speed by redesigning the street in a way that it's more attractive to pedestrians and bicyclists, and they can also use that street. Because as I look at it, so I think it's the Broad Street from Tank Farm to Buckley Road. It especially, like, just south of Tank Farm, there is potentially, definitely there is room for improvement in terms of slowing the traffic down and bringing in more pedestrians and bicyclists and so forth there. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And then this is interesting because if you recall that route also leads to the elementary school there too. So even if there are folks who might want to, maybe have their kids, maybe especially the 6th grade kids, 5th grade kids, who might be able to bicycle to school otherwise, they're probably scared of, like, having their kids go to 45, 55 miles per hour. So this is a very, very good candidate that you've got going.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think those are the questions that come to my mind at the moment.
Yeah, and feel free to, as you're working through this, I'll be here till 11, so feel free to drop by again if something else comes up, or I'll also have office hours tomorrow as well, so you could stop by tomorrow as well.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Professor.
Okay, take care.
Okay, bye-bye.